All right, appreciate everybody coming out. Kind of quickly review Michigan State. Actually, before getting to Michigan State, address Fred Hansard. I won't get into the specifics of it, but Fred will be done, for the season. Had to undergo a surgery and will be done for the season. So, I know all the guys and the families and the coaches and his parents are very, very supportive of Fred, but he will be unavailable for the rest of the season. Getting into specifically Michigan State, critical statistics that we talk about every single week. The turnover battle, we were even, and we didn't win, and we had a bunch of opportunities to really win that. That was significant in the game. Penalties were significant in the game, especially either the pre-snap penalties or the post-snap penalties that are correctable. Drive start, I think, was big. The difference, we ended up winning that by a little bit, but the reality is we had two inside the 10-yard line, one at the 2-yard line, one inside the 10. I thought that was a major factor in the game, and although the sack battle, we had 3 and they had 1, we were pressured a lot. So that, and then the explosive play battle, I think probably one of the mistakes that we made is we were pretty focused on being patient with the run game, and we were able to get the run game going and ran the ball on them better than anybody had all year long, but we weren't as explosive as we need to be in this offense. So I think they're the main things that kind of jump out. And then the last point I'd make is, we had gotten better all year long. Felt like that week to week, watching the tape. Felt like that during the games. Felt like that after the games, watching the tape. It did not feel like that this past week. So obviously we need to get back on that track.
James, being in a similar situation last season, what are some of the things you think that helped the team get back on track, on or off the field, after Michigan State lost a year ago?
I think the biggest thing for all of us, coaches, players, everybody involved in the organization, is sticking to our process and focusing on the things that we can control. Making sure our players are doing that as well as the coaches. Focusing on our schemes, making sure that we're being as detailed as we possibly can in meetings, that we're holding everybody accountable to that standard every single day at practice, and that the old guys are helping the young guys mature as much as they possibly can to understand the seriousness and the significance of that standard. So I think that's the biggest thing that we have to do, is make sure that we're sticking together, that we're staying positive, and that we're focusing on the things that we can control and get those things fixed and get better at it. Because obviously last week we did not do that.
Hey, James, how you doing?
Good.
Doing good. Given the lack of production of some of your veteran receivers, do you think it's time to take a look at some of the younger kids, especially the true freshmen? And with that said, what are the challenges for true freshman receivers playing at this level that the ordinary person may not take into account?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. Yeah, I think we do that every week. We're constantly looking and saying, is there someone that can help us? We do have a lot of confidence in those vets, and I think obviously we feel like they're going to have one of those breakout games, and we feel like that every week. But yeah, is there some young guys that we're looking at? Yeah, I think obviously Justin Shorter had a setback during camp, which kind of slowed his production and experience, being able to gain those reps and those experience in practice. Daniel George has done a really nice job. And John Dotson has done a really nice job. You see some of the other guys getting some reps in complementary roles. For Daniel, he's big, strong, and he's explosive, and he plays that way. For Jahan, he's one of these guys, the game just comes very easy to him. He's a natural football player, and Justin has a lot of ability. But I think your point is a good one. Running routes in high school, when you're very rarely going against another, Division I athlete, and you may see one, maybe two, on a crazy week, maybe 3 coverages. And then also how those coverages affect your route. So now not only do you have to be able to, beat the defender over you physically, but then you also have to know all the nuances in terms of how the routes get adjusted based on certain coverages or pressure or blitz or those types of things. And that time and that chemistry with Trace. I think that's what you've seen a few times this year, where you see Trace go to throw the ball and he pulls it back because he's expecting the guy to run a route differently than the way it was run. So what we're trying to do is kind of a combination of those things, get those guys, up to speed, but also be a little bit more consistent with our running backs, receivers, tight ends, in the passing game, because that's obviously an area that we're not, probably as explosive or as efficient as we need to be right now.
James, after the game, Trace said that this team needs to be stronger now more than ever, and it needs to come together. You guys were able to do that last year after a couple losses. There were a lot of key seniors that were behind that with Jason and Marcus and those guys. Are you concerned that the team maybe is too young to do that this time around, or are there any challenges in that regard with how young this team is?
Yeah, we have a younger team. There's no doubt about it. We got less of those guys that have been through this type of adversity before, but the ones that we have, I do think have really strong voices and are culture drivers for us and have been really good. But does it strain those guys? Yeah, because there's less of them. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, each week when we watch the cut-ups and go through situations as we're coming up with the game plan, we typically are watching, the previous game. The previous game against that opponent from the year before. And you see guys like Marcus Allen, who played a lot of football for us, and Jason Kavita, who played a lot of football for us, and the D tackles and so on and so forth. We have less of those guys, on offense and defense. So those guys have to have stronger voices for us. There's no doubt about it. They've been through this adversity, they've been through the challenges before, and we got to push our way through it.
James, over the last 2 years, Indiana had limited Saquon Barkley less than 60 yards, less than 3 yards to carry. What is it about Indiana's scheme that makes it so tricky to go up against, and why do you maybe see Miles Sanders having success this time around? What does he need to do to kind of break out of that?
Yeah, I think that goes back to what I was saying before is, this head coach and this defensive coordinator, from what we see on film and from what we have studied, they probably more so than most people are going to stay to their base plan and have subtle tweaks each week. They have a very specific plan against each formation and back alignment set on how they're going to stop what they think are the 2 or 3 things that you do the most, from a tendency standpoint. And it can be pretty different, watching them on tape. So that's always the challenge is, what is the defense of the week going to be? So I think that's where you've seen them improve defensively. They've done a really good job. They play aggressive, they play fast. And they got a pretty good plan, but it's also, it's a lot of check with me stuff. You see a lot of stuff on tape where they're looking to the sideline. The expression the coach uses, who's going to have the chalk last to try to get the perfect call into the game. And there's some things that we think we can do to help with that as well. But, we've been pretty consistent this year, probably more consistent in our run game in terms of eliminating negative yardage runs, tackle for loss, and things like that. I think that's really helped us this year. I think that's Miles and his approach, as well as the O-line and tight ends, factored into that as well. But there's going to be some of those things that come up as well. Saturday they're going to have some times where they catch us. And I also think that's an area where Ricky's doing a really good job, where where there's not too many plays where the ball's being snapped and you got a free blitzer coming off the edge as soon as we're handing the ball on. I think there's been less of that. So a combination of all those things.
Hey James, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. You've mentioned before that you don't feel like your staff gets enough credit for developing players as much as recruiting them. guys like Garrett Taylor or Jan Johnson coming in and not being big names that then play very well for you. On the flip side of that, as a developer of talent, how do you know when a guy is stalling in his development or maybe can't or isn't getting better, and how frustrating is that for you?
Yeah, I think it's obviously, most importantly, those things show up on Saturday, which at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You know, were you able to produce when it mattered most? And that's for players, that's for coaches, that's for all of us. But obviously, the games are a part, but also things that you're seeing, you know, every single day at practice, what you're hearing in the weight room, you know, what you're hearing academically. That's a huge piece for us here at Penn State and within our program. That's what I'm hearing from the strength staff. That's what I'm hearing when our guys are doing community service. It's all of it, you know, and I think that's what is so special about college football, and I think that's what's so special about Penn State is the greater impact, you know, and I get it. We're in season, so the focus is on football. And that's ultimately what we're responsible for. But I also know at Penn State we take great pride in all the other things. So when we talk about development, it's development of all of that. It's development of, are they getting bigger and stronger and faster and more explosive? Are they getting more fundamentally sound in terms of techniques and things that we ask them to do on the football field that's going to translate to games? It's maturity. It's how they're dealing you know, with a fan. That's how they're dealing with people in the community. That's how they're interacting on campus, off campus, when it comes to community service. It's all of it. It's all of it. It's how we handle with challenging losses. That's a football lesson. That's a life lesson. So when I talk about development, I'm talking about all of that. I'm talking about how the program has developed over the last 4 or 5 years. I'm talking about how our players have developed. I'm talking about graduation rates. I'm talking about all of it. And obviously, you know, last week was hard, and the week before was challenging. There's no doubt about it. But I will tell you, just like I tell our players that I want us to do everything we possibly can to prepare Sunday through Friday so that they can put their head on the pillow Friday night and be confident waking up Saturday morning. And I think our guys do a really good job of that. I do the same thing. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, losses are tough, and I agonize over them as much as anybody, and I know our fans do as well because they're invested. But I also know that I sleep well at night knowing that our program has grown dramatically over the last 5 years. Is it where we want it to be right now? No. Is it where anybody wants us to be exactly right now? No. But I know we're headed in the right direction. I know our players are growing and getting better, both on and off the field academically. I know our coaching staff is as well. And then the type of father I am, the type of husband I am, and that. So when I talk about development, it's all of that. It's all of that. And when you see guys like Saquon Barkley come back last weekend, and the things that he says to you privately in the locker room, and get a chance to talk with Michael Motti, and he stops by the offices and how he's speaking about the program, and so on and so forth, I know we're doing it the right way. And what happens is, in any organization, with any CEO, with any team, there's typically 3 steps forward and 1 step back, and that step back is painful, and you got to learn from it, and you got to grow, and you got to evolve, and you got to get better. And that's what we're going to do.